first of all, the view that there is no transcendent being. Now that is a dogmatic view because they have no proof. They just dogmatically state it and they're passionate about it. So they are religiously anti-religion. Yeah, and they absolutely have no absolute to back up the absolutism. My question is, if God is a myth, why do you get so upset about it? Why are you so passionately against this non-being? Obviously, you're not denying it. In fact, you are upset with this being and then say, I don't believe in it. If you really don't believe in it, you will leave God alone. But you, as an atheist, engage so much, so obsessed by this notion there is no God. It's become a reverse form of religious belief. So atheism is not an absence of religion. In fact, it's a passionate religion. Because I would say if I really don't believe there is no God, I would not waste all my effort trying to disprove that which doesn't exist. The atheist has not proven there is no God. They just believe there is no God. So that's the first serious problem. Then you must also, how do you justify your atheism? By saying that there is no God. You must also have a total knowledge of reality. Where do you get that knowledge to say there is? So if you have that knowledge, you already God anyway. So atheism is a self-refuting philosophy. It has no substance. And then the worst part is that the atheists claim to be rational, but they have no basis for their rationality. Because if we live in a universe without the existence of God, we live in a random universe, an irrational universe. Now my basic question is, how do you get reason from a non-rational universe? How do you justify rationality in a universe that has no basis for rationality? And of course, then you got a problem with morality. Atheists are often upset for the atrocity of religion, they call it. But why get upset if there are no absolute? So you have those problems. And then you also have a problem for respect. In fact, the ability to debate itself is a gift that comes from a transcendental being. If there is no ultimate truth, so you have no grounds by which you say, this is not true. Even to say the existence of God is not true, you have to have a supporting ground. The atheists have no absolute to deny the view they hold on to say it is not true. You must have a standard for truth. Atheists have no standard for truth. They have no standard for reason. They have no means of explaining reason. If reason is just an outcome of accidental atoms, then all our discussion is irrational. If it is irrational, then you cannot say you are right and others are wrong. So atheism provides no ground for anything. All they can say is, I believe in nothing. But then apply those three laws. To say I believe in nothing is pointless. Because if you really believe in nothing, then someone can abuse you and you cannot have moral grounds to attack that person. So what you have in the context of atheism is might makes right. But even that is unsupportable because an atheist lives in a rational universe. And in an irrational universe, there is no rational dialogue. So what is the atheist doing in the universe? So it is very humorous to really look at atheism. So that's why Plato was right when he said atheism is a disease of the soul. It is not the error of the mind. So atheism has no ground for anything. They believe in nothing, and therefore there is nothing to do. In fact, they're good for nothing because they don't believe in any, they may believe in goodness, but they have no ground to support the goodness. I'm not saying atheists are totally without moral. They have moral, but they have no justification for their morality. So atheism is a joke because they're the super clowns in a sense because they are anti-religion, anti-religious, but they're religious. They're anti-intellectual in the sense, but they have to use intellectual tools to defend their position. So atheism is really a contradictory position. It is the worst form of religion you can have. They don't know how. What I'd like to say is that they are ignorant of how ignorant they are. That's what you have in atheism, basically. I mean, it sounds very cruel, but then you see, even if they accuse me of being cruel, they are supporting my view. So this is the trouble with the atheistic philosophy. Atheism is a non-moral philosophy. It's a non-rational, non-value, non-moral belief system. So given atheism as a philosophy, you have no grounds for compassion. So man, as Russell says, an accidental atom. Jean-Paul Sartre says it's meaningless that we are born, it's meaningless that we die. So all is meaningless. So if you read Ernest Hemingway, same thing, that man is a mistake. Nietzsche says that man is a disease on the skin of the earth. It's a depressing philosophy, basically. It's existentially suicidal, morally immoral. There's no hope, there's no optimism. It is actually a reverse of life. That's why Jesus said, I'm come that you might have life. Atheism is a celebration of death. You look at Nietzsche's life, logically, atheism should lead us to suicide, basically. If there is no God, what is there to live? Because living is God's idea. That's why Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. So Christianity is pro-life, whereas atheism is anti-life in a logical sense of the word. In fact, atheism cannot support anything that is valuable because it is valueless. Because God is the ground of our being. So if God is the ground of our being, then He provides value for life, reasons for life, morality for life, goodness for life. One atheist challenged me once. He said, I don't believe there is a God. I said, don't you believe in the greatest good? Don't you believe in the greatest love? Don't you believe in the greatest truth, the greatest goodness? And that's what God is. God is the greatest love. He's the greatest truth. He's the greatest reason, the greatest value, the greatest goodness. So that's what it. So pro-God is optimistic. Anti-God is pessimistic because there is no transcendent God. So you become your God yourself. This is why in atheism perpetuates murder, all that, because murder is not wrong. You cannot condemn murder because this is survival of the fittest. And therefore, every man is God in that sense of the word. So man has no fear of God, so he can do whatever he wants. There's no accountability. There is no reason to be compassions, love, reason, intellectual. All these are alien to the atheistic premise. So that's why we can see the communist Russia. 60 million people lost their life because of communism, communistic atheism. Pol Pot, 2 to 3 million. And China, same thing, under Mao. Millions of people were slaughtered because people are the means to an end. And so we need a philosophy that will support life, that will give good reason, that can enjoy a sunset and say that's a beautiful thing. In atheism, there is nothing beautiful to see, nothing good to support, and therefore it's all negation and negative. And that's the difference between belief in God and a belief without God. If there is no God, there is no evil. If there is no God, evil is not a problem because evil does not exist. Evil is just our false perception. So the atheist says you perceive reality wrongly. Well, in this case, they can be still applied and say, well, we perceive. So we cannot justify the existence of evil or conceptualize it because all we have is human subjectivity. We say that's a beautiful sunset. And what is that? So the objection against evil becomes subjective. But you need an absolute being. To say something is evil, you must also believe something is good. So you must have a moral law to say what is evil and what is good. But if you don't have God, you don't have a moral lawgiver. And therefore, evil is a subjective opinions of individuals. In some cases, the cannibals say, thou shalt eat thy neighbor as thyself. In a civilized society, we say, thou shalt love your neighbor as yourself. And on what basis? If there is no ultimate being, there's no ultimate ground for any moral notion. So the existence of God does not mean that is and evil are incompatible. Yes, we do live in a fallen world. People have rebelled against. Evil is a moral act. There's a physical evil as well as the moral evil. But if you look at the Hitler's, killing 6 million Jews, to condemn that action as evil, you must have a standard to judge. But how does an atheist judge anything? He has nothing, no principle. He has no basis for judging anything. Even if he does, it's a subjective thing, and it's not objective. If there's such a thing as objective evil, then there must be a ground for that objectivity. God would be the basis for that morality. But then if God exists, then you can't at the same time say he doesn't exist because of evil. It's a circular reasoning. So God allows evil to exist because man is free. And through our freedom, we bring, Hitler had a choice. He exercised his freedom of choice and he brought evil into the world. So the freedom of choice is the means by which evil came into the universe. You can see that. But God can stop all evil. But if he were to stop all, he must also control all human actions. And in that case, we would have no freedom. And when we don't have any freedom, we're not human beings anymore. We're just robots. So God created a beautiful world, but sadly, we choose against the good and bring evil into the world. So God has nothing to do with evil because evil is a result of human choices in the world. The best example of that is the cross, where people crucified a good person, a moral person, a lovely person, a person who helped people, who fed the poor and did all that, yet they took that being and crucified. That is an evil thing. But then God takes it around and transforms that for the good. So the beautiful part is that God has not left in an unloving universe. He has loved us to such an extent he went to the cross. And then he forgives the greatest sinners. And so we see in that event the beauty of God's love for us. So we must not give up in despair, but accept and be sensible about it. That there is, yes, there is evil in the world. There is the saint and there is the insane. So we must not just reject the truth because we see insanity, but there is also sanity, so much of that. So the existence of evil does not remove the need for God. In fact, it demands the reality of God to judge any moral actions. Atheism stifled moral progress. It has no basis for moral condemnation or appreciation, values, pursuit of knowledge too. If there is no transcendent being, then what is there to study? Because that's why Buddhism, in its denial of God, it celebrates ignorance in a sense, because there's nothing worthwhile knowing about. So all is human perceptions, and there is no divine being. So one is left with your own imagination. Of course, if that's the case, why bother studying? But the early scientists like Kepler, Isaac Newton, Faraday, Simpson, all these famous scientists from the 16th century to the 18th century were theists. And they could see that if there is a transcendental being, then life is good, and science is possible, knowledge is achievable, and we live in a beautiful universe. But you remove God out of the equation, you have a dark universe, empty universe, a universe without meaning and purpose. So that's the view of the atheistic philosophy. So if you really take atheism and the Christian worldview, they're totally different. One is based on the despair of man. The other is based on the hope of God. One is based on the value that comes from a transcendental being. Atheism has no value whatsoever. All the values that we create is whatever man has created. In the case of, there was a time when during the Nazis were killing the Jews, one young man who professed to be an atheist said to the rabbi, "How could you believe in a God in the midst of all this tragedy?" The rabbi looked at the young man and said, "How could you believe in man? Because if you believe in man, you find the corruptions in man. You find the despair in man, the hopelessness and greed and all that. So that's why you need a transcendental being beyond man. Man is not sufficient to help in the case of life. There ought to be a transcendental being. And that has been the motivation behind science, education, and so forth.